Hey guys, Chris of the Polish Geek welcomes you to another movie review, a review of The Fantastic Four First Steps. And I have to say, it was a really good comic book superhero movie. I ended up really enjoying it because the marketing for this movie was admittedly pretty terrible, and the 2005 Fantastic Four is pretty bad, and plenty of people were saying that if anyone could do justice to Fantastic Four, it's the MCU, and 7 years ago I probably would very much agree with the sentiment, but that sentiment is long gone now because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has not been particularly good since Avengers Endgame. I mean, yeah, we've got some amazing hidden gems like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, or Deadpool vs. Wolverine. Those were all great. In fact, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is actually among my favorite in the whole MCU, but doesn't change the bigger picture. That MCU post-Endgame overall was not particularly good, and I even thought Thunderbolts was very overrated. So, and combined with how terrible marketing was for this movie, and no wonder nobody was particularly excited. Plus Pedro Pascal is in, and he's one of the cringiest people in Hollywood, so it's perfectly understandable. There was no reason to be optimistic for this, but it ended up to be a really good movie, actually. Although, I will also say one more thing. Did it do justice though to Fantastic Four? I'm not the right person to answer that question. I'm not a comic book reader. I've never read any of the comics. My familiarity with the Marvel is mostly through MCU, actually. Plus the old Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, so yeah, that's as far as I'm familiar with Marvel. So I'm not the right person to tell you if it done justice to the comics version of Fantastic Four, but that's just the fact that the actual movie was really good and really interesting, and it very much felt like a Phase 1 Marvel movie, probably largely because it was standalone, so that very much helped elevate it. But before we start talking more about how good this movie actually was, let's answer a question that plenty of people probably keep asking anytime a good Marvel movie gets released. Will the movie save the MCU? And to that the answer is an easy no, absolutely not. As I already said before, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is literally one of my favorite movies in the MCU, and I truly loved Deadpool vs. Wolverine and loved how it very much was a love letter to fans. It poked fun at plenty of the current problems, but one important thing is, a treasure in the trash doesn't clean the trash. You just take out a jewel and that's it. But it doesn't magically now make the trash not trash. Again, a jewel in the trash is still very much trash. You just take out a jewel, and just several individual good or even really good movies don't change the bigger picture. So yes, the answer to that question of will it save the MCU is a very easy no. I can just compliment this movie and praise it in isolation, largely because I said of its standalone status. And why I thought it was a really good movie, because the first thing I gotta talk about is I really loved the dynamic of the Fantastic Four team. The dynamic between the characters is great, as are all the characters. They're pretty likable and you very much care about what happens to them and all that. And as I said, their dynamic and chemistry with one another is just great, as are the performances, although Pedro Pascal is pretty cringy. I've seen plenty of people saying they don't want to see this movie just for Pedro Pascal, and honestly, I don't blame them. This guy is really cringe, so even if being objective, his performance was also pretty good, but because it's so recognizable Pedro Pascal, it's just hard not to get angry when you just see his face. And another criticism I saw from one guy, actually, that this feels more like a science fiction movie than a superhero movie, but that's another criticism that I just don't understand. Marvel Cinematic Universe movies have very much been experimenting with different genres, Captain America Winter Soldier was pretty much a political thriller, whereas Captain America First Avenger was a World War II period piece with some Indiana Jones adventure thrown in, while the Guardians of the Galaxy movies were basically a Star Wars style space opera. So yeah, the MCU has been experimenting with different genres a couple of times, so this one is just science fiction. I actually really like that part. Speaking of which, I also have to say is that I love the 60s aesthetic of the movie while still very much taking place in the future. Basically, you could say this movie is basically like taking place in 2025, but not our 2025, but more like what would like people in the 60s imagine like 2025 to be like. I really love that. That's very much feels like what would 2025 be if what would people in the 60s imagine like 2025 to be. So yes, I really like that aesthetic, and because of that also the world building was really good. I really love that part. Another thing I really love is also the theme of parenthood. That was actually one of the major themes, because two of the members of the Fantastic Four were actually husband and wife, and I also thought their chemistry was great and how they're about to have a son, and then yeah, I really love that. Especially that I do actually like themes of parenthood in movies, especially that they now seem very non-existent in modern Hollywood, unfortunately, but I love it very much in this movie. And by the way, I really want to be a father myself someday, but still haven't found the right woman. But I wish I become a father someday. But yes, the theme of parenthood in this movie was just amazing. The villain was also quite good, actually, especially that, like, being Galactus, like, he looked really, really awesome. And even though, because in the 2005 Fantastic Four, he was just nothing more than a giant cloud. And even though I'm not familiar with the comics, I do know that a giant in purple armor is actually far closer to how he was portrayed in the comics. And yes, I think this version of Galactus is so much better from his 2005 incarnation. And as I said, he was a pretty good and compelling villain. Certainly not among the best MCU villains, but very good for this movie. And one more thing, the post-credit scene is very much setting up even more. But am I excited? And I think the answer is also pretty much nope. As much as I enjoyed the movie and think it's a really good movie, it doesn't change the bigger picture, which is that Marvel currently overall is not in a good shape. Just because this movie ended up being really good and pretty much what all the fans would want from it doesn't make then now that Avengers Doomsday, that the post-credit scene was very much setting up, is now magically gonna be a great movie. No, we have to wait and see. And unfortunately, if you ask me, I'm unfortunately betting on that it's not gonna be particularly good at best. But we'll see. Like, nobody expected this to be any good, and yet we've all been so impressed, so you never know. But overall, as I said already before in the video, a jewel in the trash doesn't clean up the trash. So this movie being good doesn't mean MCU is saved. And as of right now, it's not. Especially that. But the one more thing I want to say is that if you ask me, of all the post-Endgame Marvel Cinematic Universe movies where this would rank, well, my favorite is still easily either Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or Deadpool vs. Wolverine. I think I will still go with the Guardians, but Deadpool vs. Wolverine is close second. And this I'll put like number 3, kind of like on par with Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, so yeah, like my favorite post-Endgame MCU movie is easily Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, followed by Deadpool vs. Wolverine, and this I'll put like number 3 or number 4, somewhere on par with Spider-Man No Way Home. But remember, several good movies don't change the bigger picture. So, thank you all of you for checking out this review. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!